so I had a very strong connection to this little girl, and picked a girl's name. And then, of course, out comes the little boy. And women talk about the birth experience and how magical. I mean, I was like, who are you?
They changed you in the womb. Hi and welcome to 9+9, the honest pregnancy and birthing podcast. My name is Michaela Talvar, and in this episode we will be talking about two things which seem to be diametrically opposite but then turned out not to be, and that is spirit babies and IVF. And I'm sure a couple of you might have heard of either of those terms, but today we're going to demystify both of them with Emily, who's the mother of 2 children, and she's going to explain everything about spirit babies and IVF to us in this one episode. Welcome, Emily. Thank you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on the show.
Good morning. So when I heard about spirit babies first, that was actually from you. And what is really interesting to me is, are you generally like a spiritual person? I don't mean like doing yoga and like... But are you following a specific faith, or have you always followed a specific spiritual practice that you got into this, or how did it happen?
Yeah, I mean, it happened very organically over time. I think, a series of life events, relationship issues, business problems, trying to find my path. And I started sort of exploring spirituality in different modes. So yes, I started with things like yoga and whatnot, but I ended up getting into doing past life regressions and working with hypnotherapists, working with other healers, working with doing Vipassana meditation. I went on Vipassana meditation 3 or 4 times. But each of the different things I've done has sort of helped me evolve as a person, heal things from the past, and also sort of push me further and further towards what my true calling and purpose in life is, to find the right path in life. So it's been a wild ride, but a journey.
That's pretty grueling. I mean, doing Vipassana once, I did it once. It's been a life-changing experience, but to do that 3 times is quite. So I would say you're genuinely very, very much on that wavelength of the spirit. These are quite some intense, different kind of practices that you've tried. But so thinking that you come from this very spiritual, very deeply connected to some mystical source kind of person, and then yet you have chosen to go for IVF. So are these 2 things excluding each other? Like, was it like, nothing's working, so I'll try the most medical, most proven numbers, and there is nothing that is anything left to chance? Or is it more like, oh no, if the world is so spiritual, then science is just to prove that there is more meaning and that we have such an advanced science now?
I mean, that's really interesting. And I believe that the IVF thing happened for a reason. There was a divine intervention with that happening in my life. I was struggling at the time mentally with the prospect of being a mother. So I knew that there was a churn inside about, my husband was definitive, like he wanted to be a father and he was so excited. I knew that deep down that was my calling, is to be a mother, but I had some very deep-rooted beliefs and past experiences that was sort of, I had a resistance. And also I had a very strong identity with being an entrepreneur, being I'm a businesswoman, I'm doing things with my career, and there's a huge clash. I mean, how do you juggle those 2? That's the existential question for all women.
Yeah.
I remember we got married very late, and I said, look, I want to be married for 1 year before we start trying, and so I think I was 39. So then when I hit 40, we were like, okay, let's go see the doctor and just sort of see what he has to say about the whole thing. And of course, I do believe that there is there is a very big commercial churn behind the IVF thing. And I think that people, you know, doctors and everyone's all too quick to sort of go, oh gosh, you're 40, you're 41. And, you know, we did all the testing to see my fertility and all of that. And it was, I mean,
But did you have doubts about your fertility and hence you went? Because why didn't you just try it the normal way?
Well, we were. I mean, it's not like we were being, you know, safe or anything like that. We were just like, let's see what happens. But we weren't like trying. But, you know, obviously we're newlyweds. And so then it was like, okay, nothing's happening. Okay, let's just go and see what the situation is. And I think we did a test. I think he had recommended doing the whole IUI kind of route. And we tried that. And then sort of, you know, not much happened, but there was, all of that was quite traumatic for me. I think, you know, no, women don't, none of us enjoy going to the gynecologist and all this prodding and
also
probing.
somebody telling you like, oh, you're old.
Well,
yeah, I mean, I find that quite shocking how often they tell you, even when you're 35, they're like, well, you're premenopausal. And you're like, what? Like,
yeah, hello. I know, I didn't so much believe, you know, because I feel very young, and I also, you know, I believe that when things are meant to happen, they will happen. But I knew that there was I knew I had my own issues that I had to go through, but at the same time, like, I had to still be doing, like, you know, you still had to be in action. So yes, we're trying naturally. Then we were like, okay, let's do the IUI thing.
What is IUI?
It's like, it's an assisted kind of thing where they, you know, they kind of assist you a little bit, but then they take the sperm from your husband and then they do it all manually kind of thing. They time, you know, the timing when you know, you're ovulating, and then they put it in kind of thing.
Oh, wow.
So it's not IVF, but it's the phase before that. So I tried all of that, and yeah, whatever. I mean, you know, we weren't really getting results, and I was worried that, oh, you know, the clock is ticking. Is it ever going to be too, you know, am I going to be too late? And what about my eggs? And I don't know, you know, it is a stressful sort of time for women. And so I, you know, whatever, we were advised to go down that route, and I had massive resistance. I mean, I did. It's a huge, fearful thing. You don't know what it involves, and, you know, the doctors were not great at explaining the process and like articulating exactly what it entailed. But I also was, you know, I was eager to also show my husband that I was willing to try. I'm not, because I also was having my own struggle about becoming a mother. But then I was like, I have to try and like do these things. So it was a challenging time. But anyway, we embarked on the whole IVF thing, and
yeah, I mean, to do IVF, you have to have a lot of guts and money. I mean, it's expensive also.
Yeah.
So you pay with each trial, or how does it work?
It's different with each doctor, Dal, you know, and I've been to 3 different IVF doctors now. So the first one, you know, it was a sort of a pay-as-you-go kind of thing, but I just had this weird vibe, and I remember I went and they did the first lot of injections, and I just kind of went running for the hills, and I was like, no, I don't like this doctor, I'm not feeling the vibe. So then, whatever, and then I was like, okay, let me find someone else, and so I went to a very reputed sort of hospital, which, you know, everyone had talked about, and again, I went and met the doctors, and again, I'm not vibing with them. But then part of me was like, well, is this just my own resistance? Maybe I'm not going to vibe with any of the doctors. But, you know, in hindsight, I wasn't vibing with the doctors. You know, they were very commercial. It was very much a factory. And I mean, it was hideous. And, you know, the costs, there were all these hidden costs. So, you know, it was all a bit vague. I think it depends on what part of the world you live in, but that was my experience. In the end, you know, I did 3, they recommended for my age to do 3 rounds of embryo harvesting. So we did, over a period of time, we did 3, and I think we did it over 2 years. Because it's brutal, it is taxing on the body.
But embryo is already a fertilized egg.
Yeah, so they collect the eggs, and then they immediately fertilise them and, create the embryos. And it's about how many embryos you get that are viable. So each time we were not getting lots of eggs. And I think over the course of the 3 things, we got 12 embryos, which some people get 12 or 18 in the first go, but for whatever reason, mine was a little, less. And I did one round so they wanted to bank the eggs while I was as young as possible. You bank them before you start trying to put them back in. Then we went round through the whole process of, okay, let's try implanting. And that was the most horrific experience. With those doctors, that was the most horrific experience of my life. I mean, I was screaming. It was very painful. I think there were other issues with my body. Like I had other health problems that was also got flared up and exacerbated by that whole IVF and tampering with my hormones and all of that. But I didn't realise that at the time, So, and, they were like, well, why are you reacting so badly to this whole process? And I've had friends who've done it all and they haven't had any issues. It's been a smooth run for them. But for me, whatever, my situation, my body, whatever health issues I already had, it was very difficult. And so we did a failed attempt with them, and then I just was like, that's it, I'm out of here. We're not. And so I took my embryos and found another doctor that was recommended through friends. And I mean, what a difference. This man is the most beautiful soul. I mean, just a wonderful human being, and he's very, he has purpose. It's not expensive at all. It's not a factory. It's very personal. I mean, so I wished I had sort of shopped around a little bit more in the beginning.
Also because you spend so much time. I mean, it also would give a huge weight to your relationship if you're trying so hard to get pregnant in different ways for like 2-3 years. Like, do you think about anything else in your relationship?
Yes,
also? It's very taxing.
It is taxing. And my husband particularly, once we started doing the implanting and then it failing and all of this, I mean, he was really rocked by all that. I was on my own journey of figuring out my own stuff, as well. And I do believe that all of that, it all did happen for a reason. Because all of that, when you face these challenges and you put yourself in these pressure cooker kind of situations, it does force you to figure things out and, seek solutions. So I was doing all of this, but at the same time, I'm on my spiritual, I'm talking to my healing lady and I'm doing other different things as well. But, when you work with those people as well, then they're not going to, the worst thing a psychologist can do or, someone can do is to say, you're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
I think you have to come to that, answer yourself. And, it wasn't until sort of, in hindsight, I wish, maybe I wish I didn't do it because it was physically, I think it did mess up my body a lot and I had all sorts of health issues.
Yeah, I would assume it ages you, like it progresses or it speeds up your aging, right? Because you're going through this hormonal change which you're not supposed to be going through.
Yeah, I wouldn't know how to describe it. All I know is that it created an imbalance in my system. Maybe there was already an imbalance there, but then it just made it bigger. However, the solutions are all out there. I mean, then I ended up, I went down a functional medicine route and sort of have been managed to sort of heal and reverse a lot of the damage that was done.
Functional medicine is homeopathy?
No, it's a different line of medicine, but they believe that they believe a lot of things. Start with allopathy. Let me compare it to allopathy.
Yeah.
Allopathy always looks at they give some sort of pharmaceutical thing to treat the problem, the symptom that you have.
Yeah.
Functional medicine looks at the symptoms, all of the symptoms, physical, mental, spiritual, everything. They look at you holistically, look at the symptoms and then go, okay, what is behind the symptoms? What is the root cause of that? So that was the first time I'd sort of had anyone really look at me and my health history in entirety, and because everything is ultimately sort of connected. And so then they, you know, there was a lot of different things, you know, hormone imbalances, gut issues, parasites, you know, infections, all sorts of different things. So then I went on a sort of intense protocol to sort of, you know, solve all of that and reverse all of that through food, through supplements, like no drugs or anything like that. Very natural process. It was difficult because there's a lot of lifestyle changes.
A very slow process, I would assume. You're a very patient person.
Yeah, so I did like a 3-month thing, but basically it's a lifestyle change. You know, you're making some changes, and but yeah, I mean, I believe that really was a wonderful solution, you know, to solving. And now I feel great, you know. But I went through all of that. But I think the IVF thing, going back to the spiritual thing, everything in life happens for a reason.
Yeah, that's true.
And now I'm 48. My husband wants 3 kids, and we've got 2. One that happened naturally, not via IVF, nothing. It was just a miracle baby, and that was when I was 44. Then the most recent one was via adoption. And I mean, that's where we can start talking about spirit babies and things. But then in that whole journey, there was this whole, the idea of a 3rd child came into our relationship and home. And, you know, that definitely wouldn't have been possible if we hadn't gone through the whole IVF thing. And now I have 3 embryos left because I've done multiple, you know, so I've got 3 left. I've got one more chance to conceive via IVF, and
But would you try after having had such a horrific experience and it didn't work out? And
well, now that I'm with a much more ethical and wonderful doctor that I feel very cared for, and you know, he's listened to a lot of my concerns. You know, I had trauma. I mean, I think there was, you know, I had some sexual abuse when I was a child. So the whole going to the gynaecologist and everyone doing what needs to be done when you're trying to conceive, and I mean, it was very traumatic.
I mean, it feels a bit like you're being violated.
Massive trauma. Yeah. And then because of the IVF thing, and because of, you know, I've had some trauma accidents in the past. They do the IVF, they put you in the operating theatre under the lights and all of this. And I would go into this like state of shock before they even started doing anything because of my past experiences. So then I spoke to him, I said, listen, I don't know why we have to do it in the operating theatre. I mean, it's a very simple process. Why do we have to be in this ultra sterile environment? And he listened to me and he said, you're right. Let's just do it where we do our regular checkups and so all of that kind of, you know, he listens, he works with me, I feel safe. And now that I've done the functional medicine stuff, I know, you know, I understand my body better. I'm in a much better place. So I also did this so that I'd be in a better place to then make the IVF work. And then whatever happens with the IVF, I know I can revisit the functional medicine stuff to heal and reverse whatever the fallout from that might have been. Like, I feel like
you feel better prepared,
much more knowledgeable, much more in tune with my body. Not just someone being taken along from the ride. I'm making the choices. I know a lot more about it because of the experience. Whereas before it was just like I'm doing what all the doctors tell me.
Yeah, it sounds a bit like you did this for your husband. I think it's quite courageous to do all of this with your body for your husband. I mean, how much do you love him? It's great. I mean, it's lovely.
Well, it sounds like our marriage is, you know, like, you know, he's a wonderful person. I love him a lot. We have a great relationship. It wasn't all for him. I mean, it was for us. But I do also know that he always was very clear straight up at the beginning of our relationship. He wanted kids. And I had a little question mark, but I knew...
You love him so much, you want to give him that joy also.
Well, I knew that it was my destiny. Yeah. I think I felt deep down that this is something I need to do and I want to do, but I was just like, when I'm ready. well, you hit 40 and then you're like 45 or whatever. I'm like, when will I be ready? You know, like sometimes you have to face those demons and go through the things. Okay, and there were a lot of demons and things I had to deal with. And that is also how I found the spirit baby stuff.
Yes, actually for most women, when you talk to them who've given birth, giving birth, like the moment the baby like transcends from inside of you to outside of you, is a spiritual experience. Right. For women, even if they are not spiritual at all before, and they might also not be after, but this like whatever, how many minutes that is, that moment is like where you're connected to some universal beam.
Yeah.
But for you, the spiritual journey has started way before the baby actually made its way out into the world, because you were in touch with a medium. Is it called a medium or like a
I think that's
guide?
I think it's. I don't know what to refer to her as, but that all happened very, again, just a random thing. You know, I was struggling with this. You know, I was looking online for some kind of a meditation or hypnosis. I'm big into hypnosis. You know, I believe there's a lot of things that can be dealt with subliminally and whatnot. I was looking for like a hypnosis or a meditation or something around fear of becoming a mother. So I'm Googling and I'm looking, and suddenly I came across this lady's website. Her name is Alea. She's based in the US. It was called Vibrational Child, and it was all about, she's a medium, very connected with the spirit world on all levels. But at some point in her life, she got a calling that, you know, she needed to help, you know, the spirit babies come in and help parents who were struggling to conceive to bring the kids in. So anyway, I read a lot on her site. I listened to some of the things. There was one there about a fear of, you know, becoming a mother. I downloaded those, or I bought them and downloaded those. And I don't know, somehow it all just resonated with me, you know, that there was and I'd never heard of this thing called spirit babies.
No, me neither.
Yeah, well, apparently, you know, all of us, or a lot of people, there are little spirit babies that are sort of around us. And some people have the gift of being able to see them or communicate with them or know that they're there or not. And so, whatever, I'd listened to this lady's thing. I must have signed up for her newsletter or something. But this happened right in the middle of the IVF thing, and then nothing happened. Like, I didn't contact her for like maybe it was like 1 or 2 years. And then one day, we're going through we've come to the dead end of the IVF process, and I just get an email in my inbox saying, you know, from this Alea, and it had gone out to a group, but like, you know, sign up for a free 30-minute consultation. I was like, this is a
free
sign.
stuff.
Free stuff. And it was, you know, it was like a sign from the universe. It was like, okay, this is something that, that I can explore. And so I was like, yeah. And so I signed up. I had a 30-minute conversation with this lady, and I just connected immediately, and I just knew. So then I purchased, 3 consultations with her. And look, it wasn't cheap. I think there was a deal on or something at the time. But anyway,
but after you invested so much, you're like, one more thing to invest in, might as well try. Yeah,
exactly. And so I did 2 sessions with that lady. The first one, you know, again, there was it was about working with me and whatever physical and emotional blockages that were there. And again, it wasn't like a psychology thing. She's working with the higher planes, and I can't even remember what we discussed at that time, but basically, you know, we did 2 sessions, and I'm not trying. My husband and I had given up trying because it's exhausting on a relationship, you know, this whole trying thing. So we weren't even trying. I did 2 sessions, and I thought it would take longer. And then whatever, we had some fleeting intimate moment, and at the end of the month, I'm like, oh, my period's late. And I was like, no, couldn't be. No, it was like one time, you know. Anyway, whatever, I was pregnant. And so then I'm
having goosebumps. Every time you tell me the story, I'm getting goosebumps.
Yeah, I was really kind of, and even my husband, who had been very skeptical, I mean, he was like sold. He's like, oh my God, like, this is incredible.
Where have I driven you down that road where you talking to the loonies?
I know. And so we did, it wasn't like, even once you become pregnant, then you're also going through different things. And these kids, she talked a lot about these kids that were coming in as being rainbow children. And I don't know if people have heard of, there's indigo children and there's different types.
I've heard of indigo children, which are basically gifted children that are connected.
Yes,
so what are rainbow babies?
Rainbow babies are basically, this is the first incarnation that they're having. So they haven't got any past lives. They're coming in like a very
you're
clean
the one who can inflict all the
slate.
trauma they can deal with in their next life. Great. Congratulations.
That is the albatross around my neck. But yes, but they're very highly sensitive, and it's not easy raising a little child like this. And I do believe that this is part of also what Alea had said, is that these children select the parents who can best support them. So because I'd done all this work and I was open to these
maybe also
concepts.
Because in life you've been an entrepreneur, you've done your career, you've done what you wanted to do in life, and you've been successful at it, that you were ready to give time to the family. Because I feel a lot of women who have children young, then you're struggling, like, do I want to be a mom? Do I want to be an entrepreneur? I had this business idea, now I have to like put this on the backseat for 10 years, or I can do it right now, then I'll neglect my kid. Like, how are you? So you probably didn't have all of this.
No, it's still a struggle, because I still was like, my work is very important to me. I still wanted to work, but I didn't want to outsource parenting either.
Yeah.
So I wanted to find that balance, which I think I've been able to do. I freelance now. I don't run a company anymore. And so that's been very, very good for, family life and things like that. But I think it is, it depends on each woman. Some women are very, like, they have this massive maternal thing, and they're born to be mothers, and they want to just do that. Second time round, and I've got another sort of, like a newborn, she came to us when she was 3 months old, via adoption. But, I still want to work. I don't want to completely,
the 40 years that you've worked for before, you don't want to give that up.
Yeah. It is difficult. It's a struggle for women, for sure. So,
as somebody talking about functional medicine, as somebody who has struggled with, and on my pregnancies, with morning, aka all day, all night, 24-hour sickness, and just like puking my heart out, you were actually quite fine in your pregnancy because of the functional medicine that you do, or homeopathic medicine.
Homeopathy,
Can you tell me, like, did you decide this right in the beginning to prevent that you're getting sick, and what was the course? If anybody's interested in this, can they just go to their homeopath and be like, hey, I'm 10 days pregnant, can you give me this?
Again, it was a very organic thing. I had been seeing a homeopath, and she was sort of helping me also with this whole, like, trying to get pregnant. I was doing all sorts of things, so I'd been seeing her. And so when I got pregnant, she was like, oh, I've got some remedies which will help you with all the symptoms you might experience throughout the whole pregnancy. And I was like, oh, okay, sounds great, So there was basically a remedy for each week of the pregnancy, So there's like week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, or like it might be week 1 to 3, then week 3 to 5. So she basically gave me those, and I was just taking them. They're sugar pills. Homeopathy. It's like a form of vibrational medicine, and so. But whatever, I had zero symptoms.
I think you deserve that after all the struggle. At least you have 9 months of peace and you can just enjoy.
Yeah, I had no morning sickness. I really just had the most smooth pregnancy. Even like towards the end when we went into COVID lockdown and everything, and wasn't able to go out, and I was like trapped in a 2-bedroom apartment for the last two months or 3 months of the pregnancy. I was just physically fine. I think I was so focused on that was a very smooth experience. would recommend homeopathy to anyone. It depends on, I mean, I assume most homeopaths would know about that. I don't know.
It sounds like it's like a course, if it's written down week 1 to 3. It
Yeah.
seems like there is a plan to it that they would probably
Yeah,
have
I mean,
in
they
their
can certainly
system.
ask about it. But I think I'm a big fan of homeopathy. I think it works on a physical and a emotional level. So sometimes you might be feeling stressed or anxious, or, you know, there are emotional things which usually create physical problems. It works on both those levels. So sometimes she'd, you know, give remedies for the emotional thing, sometimes it'd be for the physical thing, but it's all sort of connected, actually.
Yeah, I mean,
is
it's
what I've
also
discovered.
hormones in the end that make you feel terribly happy or terribly sad for no reason at all.
Yeah, yes.
Just like going with the flow.
So I was very focused on, my big concern was the birth. I mean, I was really focused on, oh God, how do I get this baby out of my body? And like, I was very stressed about that and really wanted to try and have as natural a birth as possible, as a lot of women do.
Yeah, that's a red thread in this podcast. Everybody is like, I'm going to have a natural water birth.
Yeah.
And then life happens.
Again, life happens. So I did a calm birth, you know, like course, and I'm like all into the visualization and breathing and but it just didn't happen that way. I mean, I was doing all those things, but, you know, I had about 30 years ago, I broke my back and, in a car accident. So I have like, issues around this whole lower lumbar spine area, which I think has impacted my reproductive system, my endocrine system, like all of this area has been, you know, there was a huge trauma. So, whatever, I wasn't dilating. I just wouldn't dilate. Like after labouring for 15, 17 hours, I was still at like 2 centimetres. So my body just wasn't responding and doing what it was supposed to do. So I was then taken for cesarean and all of that. So that happens. It's okay. You have to accept it. I was okay about it in the end. You know, it's like, okay, you know, this has happened. This is my body.
At least the baby's healthy. You're healthy.
Yes.
And you have your beautiful baby, which was not who you were who were thinking it would be, because you didn't check the gender. So then what happened?
Yes, we weren't allowed to know the gender, and but intuitively I was just like, it's a girl, you know. Like I think part of this whole spirit baby thing was, I mean, they didn't say that, you know, whether it was a boy or a girl or anything, but you know, you start connecting with the baby, and I think that.
And you have all these crazy dreams when you're pregnant, right? So sometimes
I don't remember that. I don't remember dreams, but somehow I just was like, there's a girl, and I'm talking to the girl, and I was, you know, even when I worked with the you know, the healing lady and some of the other people that I work with, and I was doing different, you know, ways to connect with the baby and visualize and all this, it was always coming to me that it was a girl. And so I had a very strong connection to this little girl, and, you know, picked a girl's name, and like, you know, and even my husband and I had always, since the beginning of our relationship, we talked about this little girl that we would have in our family. So we were both convinced, you know. And then, of course, out comes the little boy. And like, you know, women talk about the, you know, the birth experience and how magical. I mean, I was like, who are you?
They changed you in the womb.
I'm like, where's my little girl? And it wasn't that I didn't want a little boy. I just had felt so strongly in my space the presence of a little girl. So I was convinced. So then I'm screaming, the baby's screaming, we're looking at each other going, ah, you know, it was a very traumatic experience, the birth.
Yeah, they always say,
physically,
like, you'll always love your baby no matter how they come out. But
I mean,
think
it was
a lot
a
of
shock.
Women who have postnatal depression also would be like, no, I didn't love my baby when it came out. Like, sometimes it's a disconnect that needs to be
it was a
connected.
shock. There was some, obviously, you know, as soon as I was out of the trauma of it all, because again...
How long did that take you? But
well, it took about 24 hours, because I went into a state of shock. I had the shakes, and so I didn't really properly come round for about 24 hours. So my husband was amazing during that time. But
very special that the baby got to spend the first 24 hours with the dad.
Yeah, I remember lying there on the bed. my husband not knowing what to do with this screaming baby going, it's all right, it's all right. But anyway, you know, it was great that he was there because it was COVID, and at one point it looked like he wasn't going to, I mean, he wasn't allowed in for the birth, but he was allowed in the hospital, so that was there. But obviously after that I connected with the little boy, and now he's obviously the apple of my eye. But I always had this little girl energy in my space, you know.
Which is where we're coming to the third point of this
Yes.
conversation, which I haven't even mentioned in the beginning, which is adoption.
Yes.
So how did your daughter, she's now 5 months?
Yeah, so she's for Aria, her name is Aria, 5 months old. So when, after we conceived and had and we always knew, we were like, okay, well, this little girl's got to come, you know. We know that we wanted to have more than one child. We always thought we'd have 2 children, I think, you know, that was what we talked about. And I said, well, look, you know, I'm 44 or however old I was, and was 6 months old. I said, let's talk to Alea again, the medium, and see if there's another spirit baby or this little girl, you know, in our space that, you know, we can try and get to come in somehow, whether we do that through IVF or whatever. So I had a session with the lady, and she shocked the hell out of me. She said, there's 2 little spirit babies and they want to come together. There are 2 of them and they want to come together. And she said, one will come through you, the other one via adoption. And I was like, what? Like,
wow.
2? I was like, you know, that whole mental calibration.
I first thought, oh my God, IVF, usually you have twins, right? Oh my God, you get pregnant, you have twins.
I was fearing that too. I was also fearing that. I was like, oh my God, I can't handle twins. You know, I really, physically, I don't want to carry twins and handle that whole thing. So then I was like, okay, I discussed it with my husband. And it was funny because we had already talked about adoption when we were struggling to conceive the first time. And we were open to that. We had started the process, and then I fell pregnant the first time. So then we'd sort of stopped that. So then I was like, well, and, you know, I'm a social worker. I work with non-profits, and, you know, I very much connected with the idea of adopting a little baby that needed a home, that came from a very underprivileged background. So then we said, okay, let's do the needful, and we went through the process, which was a rigorous process, you know, the whole registering and whatnot. But yeah, so we did that, and it took 4 years. There was sort of a 4-year backlog because of COVID and whatnot. But then sort of out of the blue, we got an email saying that there was a little girl available for adoption. She was just 3 months old. And again, I was in shock because I expected the little girl to come through me. I was, you know, I thought, okay, there's a little boy that might come through the adoption, because at this, you know, we've still got those 3 embryos, right? So, and my body clock is ticking. So my husband and I had been talking about, okay, let's do the IVF. We were supposed to do it last year, but I was still sorting out my body issues and the functional medicine stuff, because all of my body issues really came to a head after I gave birth. You know, sort of, I think it was also part of the whole postpartum depression, and I mean, everything kind of came to a head. I was physically and emotionally feeling awful.
Yeah, you were focused so much on the birth that you didn't really take care of you didn't really think about
what comes next.
What comes after that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a mistake.
And also, if the baby wasn't with you for the first 24 hours, then technically you didn't breastfeed the first 24 hours.
That was again, I felt like a bit let down that I had, you know, I'd done this calm birth course, and, you know, working with my gynecologist and or obstetrician, and they hadn't sort of talked about the importance of that the golden hour, you know, after you give birth, and the baby's supposed to then suckle and get the colostrum and all of that. I sort of wasn't really aware of that. I mean, it seems stupid. I feel like an idiot that I wasn't really aware of that, but somehow
that's why we make this podcast. There are a lot of things we're not aware of until it happens.
Yeah, I mean, even the UN, the United Nations, even for, you know, women in the village and things like that, the importance of the golden hour and breastfeeding is always highlighted to social workers, and, you know, that's very important. but whatever, I gave birth in a very well-to-do sort of hospital, and okay, I was traumatised, but they still could have put the baby with me and done all of that, but they didn't. And then, of course, the baby's hungry. He was 10 pounds. They started giving him the bottle.
10 pounds, baby.
Yeah.
Oh my, good luck you had a C-section.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, so they started sort of topping him up. Oh, they didn't give him the bottle. They were pouring milk with this little local implement. So then I struggled with the whole breastfeeding thing. That was a struggle for me.
Obviously, if you got used to it, and also a 10-pound baby would probably require quite a lot of food.
He's hungry. I was not producing a lot of milk for various reasons. Again, I turned to all the spiritual stuff to try and increase my milk supply, which, in some ways it worked in that I eventually got to breastfeed for 6 months, which I felt happy about. And at least he got that.
Yeah.
But, it would have been nice to have it go longer. But breastfeeding's, it's difficult for some women.
And also, it's like such a mental thing. So if you're so in it, like, why is it not working? And then spiritually, I would feel you're going inside to fix it. And then you're focusing so hard on the milk is not coming. And then it becomes worse. No, isn't it like a backward cycle?
Yes, it is. It's a very emotional topic. And, I got triggered a lot by, the judgments by our paediatrician was like, he was very adamant, don't top the baby up, don't do this, you've got to focus on the breastfeeding. But I was, when you've got a really hungry baby who's just not getting enough and crying a lot, and the crying just triggered me a lot.
It's a certain frequency that does something to your brain, like you can't think straight when that frequency hits. Yeah.
So, but anyway, whatever. Again, everything happens for a reason, but we managed to do 6 months of breastfeeding.
That's good enough. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. So, so we had applied for the adoption and whatever, it came through last year. But at the same time, we were planning to start the IVF process. And it just came back to me about what the lady had said. These two kids want to come together. So I'm 48, I'm running out of time. Where I live, you cannot do IVF past the age of 50. There's a law. So you have to do it. I've got a year and a half to do it, or like 2 years to do it. So we were focusing on like preparing for that. I started 2 times, and for whatever reason my lining wasn't thickening, and the doctor said, no, let's abandon this cycle, let's try again. And then all of a sudden the adoption happened. And it was the little girl, which again was like, I was expecting the little girl to come via the IVF, and look.
But that little girl has been part of your family ever since the beginning, you said.
Yeah.
How, like in what way?
Just because my husband and I, in the early days of dating, I remember he had sort of said something about, I've always dreamed that there's this little girl that's going to be part of my family, and whatever. We were early days dating. And, he was like, I kind of refer to her as Scout. And so there was this little Scout thing, and we used to make a joke about it, that Scout was there. And then in hindsight, there was this little girl energy who's always been there in my space. So when Aria came along, the way she's just slotted into our family, and my husband's like, she's so easy. And I said, look, she's been with us. She knows us. She knows us. She already knew us. She's been watching and waiting to come. She knows us. And the way she's connected with us, and it's so natural. It feels like she was always part of the family. Like, it's hard to describe. I think a lot of adopted parents say that. And, it's just like, there's no difference between the love of the natural child and the adopted child. I feel like the adoption, it's been so much easier because I'm not going through my own physical, the physical, what we go through to physically recover from, giving birth, however the baby comes. Just because I've been feeling great, I can focus on her and just be a better mother. And
you can focus on being a mother and just be there for her, which is so unique. I don't think you get this ever if you give birth naturally.
Yeah, I mean, it's been really great, and
Interesting. I've never heard about this. Like, actually, from an adoption point of view, you always think about, will you tell the kid? How will you tell the kid? How can you like make them feel equal? And there are so many problems usually associated with it, like all the problems of adoption. And then, do you really want to do it? But that it can actually be easier than having a natural child.
Yes.
That thought never crossed my mind.
And who would have thought we would get a 3-month-old baby that's like a clean slate almost, you know? I mean, I do believe that she's, you know, she has little bouts of colic and where she has very quiet and like placid sort of baby, very happy baby, but she has these bouts. And because I work with a lot of like healing, I work with a multidimensional healer she works with my kids a lot. So whenever either of the kids is going through some kind of behavioral or emotional or physical kind of issues, I'm like, I need your help. I get on the phone and she does some like remote energy healing work or craniosacral remote work with them. And it clears the kids. I mean, I don't know how to explain. It's almost like they're one way, and then immediately after they're back to their normal self, you know. And a lot of the time when she's worked with Aria, our little adopted daughter, you know, she said, oh, she's processing trauma from her birth mother.
Yeah, you would assume that if you adopt a kid, they come with a certain amount of trauma.
Yeah. So, but, you know, I was expecting a toddler or, you know, we'd said 0 to 2, you get to choose an age. And so I was expecting a toddler that had been more institutionalized, had more associations and experiences and trauma from perhaps the orphanage or wherever they'd been. So to get be offered a 3-month-old baby that was, you know, coming to us.
And also you still have the baby phase. You can see them, how they learn how to roll over and start crawling and all the cute baby moments. That are so rare.
And then, you know, she being in the orphanage, I don't know how much they fed her at night, which is a terrible thing. But, you know, the first night we had her, she just slept through the night. And I woke up and I could hear this vigorous sucking on her fingers. I woke my husband, I said, I think she's hungry. I mean, we have to feed her. So now, like, you know, we quickly learned that we have to just get her up at, you know, 2 times a night and give her a feed, like a dream feed. But she doesn't wake up. I mean, it's incredible. So she sleeps through the night. I'm getting the full night's sleep.
Institute. Somebody else did the hard work of letting her cry it out for you.
So however it happened, I mean, I feel bad about that, but then whatever. I'm not a sleep-deprived mother. I do the 5 a.m. feed. My husband does the midnight or 11 p.m. feed, and and she's putting on weight. She's doing so well. I mean, she's a wonderful little soul.
Oh, beautiful. And your bigger son is also dealing with the situation fine? Because for him it must have been a shock. It's not like you can see the baby grow and the baby's coming. It's just like, hello, good morning, baby's here. Now deal with it.
You know, he didn't know. I suppose he doesn't know that how babies come normally. At some point he knew he'd been in my tummy, but he never asked, why is Aria not in your tummy? You know, I tried to prepare him. I knew the adoption would be coming. I was expecting it sometime in 2025, but it happened in 2024. But I had already started broaching the subject with him. But it's always hard for kids that there's a new person that's taking mummy and daddy's attention.
Yeah.
You know, so he was a little standoffish at first. He had, again, some physical reactions. So he immediately, like literally, as soon as she came home, he developed some styes in the eye. So again, I was working with different people to try and get that cleared and healed, but that was a tricky one. I couldn't get it. It started getting infected, and in the end, we had to just go the allopathic route. And I've never given him antibiotics in his life, and didn't want to have to do that because it kills a lot of the gut bacteria. But I had no other option. You know, I tried everything, and it just wasn't going. But then he has come around, and he's quite excited now about being a big brother. Plays with her. He's very sweet, and she's very besotted and intrigued with him. So it'll be nice to see how that.
The small ones basically think, why can't I walk? Why can't I talk? I was basically born 5 years old. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, she's watching him very carefully. But it'll be nice to see how that relationship evolves.
So now, are you planning a third one?
So that's sort of, you know, like New Year's resolutions or New Year's, it's sort of a lot to get my head around because I'm just getting used to being a mother of a second child, processing the adoption and getting things sorted at home, getting a routine and whatnot. I feel that, I mean, we're fortunate this time because all of the things I wanted to do in my first, you know, I had said, you know, we live in a place where we're fortunate, there's help available, you know, we can have a nanny and I had said to my husband, if I'm having kids, I need help. I need a nanny, I need someone helping at home, etc. But COVID, you know, we were in lockdown and so I never got any of that. And I think that that was also meant to be because I had to learn how to be a mother and do it myself and all of that. So I did it and it was really hard. It was the hardest thing I ever did. I think it took me 4 years to really embody and own and enjoy or love being a mother. But also my son was very difficult. You know, he had sensory processing issues because he's a very sensitive little kid. So that,
how does that show, sensory processing issues?
You know, he was very, very reactive to loud noises, the touch of certain fabrics. There was one point there where he would scream when I'd put him in bath water because the sensory feeling of the water on his skin, you know, like it was a lot to sort of deal with.
Wow.
So we worked with an occupational therapist, but in the end, the functional medicine, that's how I discovered functional medicine, was that, he had a lot of heavy metals in his system. You know, we live in a world where there are toxins all around us with our cleaning products and things like that. Then we have there's the vaccinations that are given. There's, the cookware that we cook with, with Teflon and all of these things, which I'd not really been aware of, really. And because he's very sensitive, maybe other kids can process and handle a lot of these toxins in their body, but he just couldn't. So then we had to do a big heavy metal, like a big detox, and work with him through functional medicine, which was very difficult. Made a lot of lifestyle and food changes at home. But that also helped me realise, actually that was what I was meant to do.
It's also good for you.
Yeah, it was good for me. It helped me get on that path, and so I think also that happened for a reason to put me on that path. So that was a difficult phase. But he's completely normal and fine now. He's great.
That's a cute age where they start like having their own imagination, and they're sharing it with you, and you get to really enjoy being a kid and seeing the world through a child's eyes. I
mean, one thing I hope that women can take away from this conversation is that, don't be so linear in, just listening to your pediatrician or one person or one viewpoint. If there are problems with your child, or you intuitively feel there are issues, or you're facing these challenges, even with your own health and whatnot, explore different modalities. We're so fortunate that there are all of these different sciences and homeopathy and all of these different things are sciences as well in their own right. I mean, I've done a lot of Ayurveda, and there are different systems that you can approach. So just keep searching, keep looking for things. If you're struggling to conceive, try different things until you find what works for you. It doesn't have to be just one route, That's the beauty.
Yeah, I think that's the gist of your story, right? Like, you tried the IVF, you're really medical, you're about tracking your cycle, you're doing all of that, but then in comes from nowhere.
Yes.
Just with a fling.
Yes.
The baby. So it's like, you keep your mind open and don't despair.
Yeah. So, we're working, we're sort of planning to book a session with another spirit baby communicator. And if you search spirit baby mediums or spirit baby communicators, there are these incredible people out there. So we connected with this lady last year because I wanted to see if the 2 children were still there. And this woman, she was incredible, and the insights she gave and the things she knew or she could tell from the session we had, it was uncanny. I mean, there's definitely something going on there, you know, like there's substance to it. It's not just some woo-woo kind of thing that some woman's doing. But she, you know, when Aria came and, you know, we adopted her from Calcutta, I wrote to the spirit baby lady and I said, the little girl Aria has come and, you know, we're so happy. And she said, oh, that's so incredible, because my husband is an adopted child from Calcutta as well. And they live in the US, you know, like it was, there are these divine things. She said, I feel like your daughter chose me to communicate with you. Yeah. And so now we're looking at doing another session with her, because I want to embark on this IVF journey, but I'm, you know, I was so connected to Aria and that little spirit girl, but I'm not feeling the little boy that's supposed to be there in waiting to come. I'm not.
Could possibly be a grandchild.
Sorry?
It could possibly be a grandchild, right?
God,
like
that's
20 years down the line.
That's a long way down the line. But yeah, so I just want to know, like, maybe to somehow get some insight to how to better connect with that little child before he comes, or, you know, to help him come. I am nervous about the IVF thing, but I feel I've got the tools now to sort of...
It would be interesting if your girl gets to meet Elia, like the medium lady, and if they would actually recognize each other.
Yes, I know. It's incredible. I mean, I wrote to Elia and said, oh, look, our little girl. So there were two mediums that we worked with. One was Elia, another one called Elaine. And I wrote to Elia, the original one, who had said there are two children coming and one's coming via adoption. And I shared with her and she was very excited. And I told her that we were going to embark on the final IVF journey and see what happens. You know, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. If not, then we'll see. Yeah.
Wow, it's a beautiful story. I have goosebumps. I hope the listeners had too. Thank you so much for coming and for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you for being open to, you know, not everyone is open to hearing about, you know.
I think every what I've learned in doing this podcast is that every pregnancy is different. Every woman has a story. And what looks on the surface just like, oh yeah, she adopted a baby, and like there is no story to it, right, on the surface. But then you go down and we started speaking and I'm like, wow, there's quite a story down there. And that happens with every single woman I talk with. Well, so she had a C-section. Well, so many women do. But then there is a story.
Yeah.
And that happens every single time. And I think that's important to know that every story is unique, and some are more unique. This is very, very, very unique. But it's worth listening to all of these stories and finding your truth and finding what resonates with you.
Yeah.
And I think it's about hope, and that there's always hope and there's always a way, and you come out, and don't despair.
Yeah.
Just believe and hope and try and do the needful. I mean, also do the hard work.
Yes.
Like you did the hard work with like fixing yourself medically. So you have to do some work, but then it'll also happen if you... There's a way for everyone. I think that's your story is just showing that it's beautiful.
Yeah, and I feel like, you know, that struggle, that initial struggle with motherhood and the idea of being a mother, you know, now that I've embraced it and I'm finally enjoying being a mother, and now I'm looking at this third thing, I feel like my life, everything in my life is just coming into place, you know. I feel like this is my path, you know, and I resisted it for a long time, and then there was all these different challenges that I was experiencing in life. But now that, you know, this is my purpose and I'm living it and I've embraced it, it's like everything else, you know, finances and work and relationships and everything is just falling into place, you know. And I probably feel like, okay, I went through really difficult last
20 years, 10 years.
Yeah, this, you know, it's been a journey, but now I feel like things are going to be good.
Yeah, you seem very at ease. That's beautiful.
Yeah, so...
Yeah. Not many mothers look radiant and at ease when they have a 5-month-old. Usually just look hassled and not showered.
Yes, yes. But no, now I'm, you know, as I said, I wanted to get a nanny and some help at home with the first one. I'm able to do that this time round, and I feel okay about it. It's, you know, it's enabling me to have that balance. I'm still able to do a little bit of work. I don't get stressed. I'm not on edge as some mothers. You know, when you're tired, it's easy to lose your temper with the kids and things like that. And you know, by having that extra help at home, I'm able to just be a happy, calm mother, which is how I want it to be.
Yeah, you should be a happy, calm mother. I believe that you would be, so I have show notes. We have show notes on this podcast where we list down resources, information, whatever you have. You will share this with me and we'll put it in the show notes. Maybe a list of mediums that would work out well, or just some books that you can read about it, or articles. We'll share this all in the show notes. And thank you, Emily, for coming.
Thank you so much. This has been a beautiful conversation.
Yeah, it's been beautiful. If you have any questions or feedback or want to know more, I can forward that to Emily. You can email us to 9+9, that is 9+9, at harkat, harkat.in. This podcast has been produced by Harkat Studios. Thank you for listening.